You're listening to the Fully Loaded Podcast with your hosts, JC Cornell and Samir Ali.
Welcome back to Fully Loaded. I'm your host, JC Cornell, alongside Samir Ali. As always, we are going to recap a little bit of the draft, but mainly the biggest recap is going to be on Loose Cannons coming Wednesday night. But we're going to just chat a little bit about some different subjects that are coming from the draft. Samir, how are you feeling?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to dive into this. I think we had a really good weekend. Honestly, I think we did really, really well, and we addressed things, positions of need, addressed, best player available in some scenarios, and I think we've upgraded a lot of positions that are going to help us moving forward, not just this season, but for years in the future.
The draft grades are pouring out, mostly positive grades for the Buccaneers, but you also, with the draft grades, that's just content for you to click on. No one's going to know how good a draft class is until a year or two or three into that class. So take that with a grain of salt, even though I'm about to say an A+ for the Bucs.
Yeah, I like the grades. I think it's hilarious because then all they're taking is, the top 150 players are assigning these numbers to these guys and they're giving them a score. But in all reality, you don't know until, I think, in my opinion, 3 years down the road. So Tom Brady was a pick for the Patriots at one point. I'm quite sure they got a really bad grade when they picked him. So it doesn't mean anything. It's all nonsense at this point. But it is fun as hell to discuss and go through and kind of try to forecast and foresee what could happen.
So, Sam, we're going to start off with our favorite picks of the draft. This is pretty easy for me. It's going to be Graham Barton out of Duke. When we talked prior to the draft, we never really even mentioned this guy because he was supposed to be a top 15 pick. I mean, the guy has a perfect RAS score of 10, just a physical freak, basically. And when you see the videos of him, even watching the video of him reacting at home, and the guy's just built in a lab, basically. This is a perfect Jason Light pick, whether he plays guard or center, but that's going to be my favorite pick of the draft. I think he comes in with all pro potential right away. I think even making the Pro Bowl as a rookie.
Yeah, we didn't discuss him, like you said. I didn't even think he was an option. I know that some people mocked him early on in the process, but he ended up gaining steam and everyone was seeing him go in top 15, definitely not falling to the Bucs. So I didn't even give him a thought. I like that pick a lot, actually, even though I was talking a lot about how you shouldn't take a center or a guard in that spot. But my personal favorite pick, and not to say I don't like the Graham Barton pick, it's Tyke Smith out of Georgia, man. This kid is the honey badger / Rondé Barber, like just Swiss Army knife that Todd Bowles loves to have in his defenses. It reminds me a lot of what he was able to build in Arizona when he was the DC there with BA as the head coach. And now we're kind of starting to see that. And now when you bring in a kid like this who can play nickel, he can play safety, you can drop him in the box, you can blitz him, you can put him into all sorts of exotic looks. You can even have him play at linebacker. You can have him drop back into a 3 safety look, even though he's at nickel at one point or another. The ability for Todd to play chess, not even on 3D chess at this point when he's on the field with Antoine and with Jordan Whitehead. Now you've got this 3-headed monster of guys that can blitz, drop back, and you almost have no drop off in their coverages, their tackling abilities, and their physicality. And that's what I like so much about this. And I think one of those things, an overriding theme for this past weekend's draft for the Bucs, physicality and culture. And you bring in a guy like this from Georgia. They know how culture works there. They know how winning works there. That's a championship pedigree type of pick. I'm excited to see how Todd's going to get him involved, how he's going to work out with him, and just where he's going to be able to push him all around in the Mad Lab. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait.
Yeah, and you mentioned all the different positions he could play. Todd Bowles kind of made that star position kind of famous in Arizona. He played star at Georgia. It's that hybrid safety linebacker role where you're in the box, and that kid can play. He's just so physical in the box, slot, whatever you want, safety, whatever you want to do with him, but he will be on the field and he will be making an impact 100%. Samir, let's talk about Graham Barton really quick. Do you see this guy as a center or a guard? Because Jason Light came out and said he's playing center, and then John Spytek came out and said he's going to be playing guard. So what are we thinking here?
So initially, early on in the draft process, the mock draft process, I thought he'd be a guy that they bring in, move him from left tackle to guard and kind of fix a position and an entire side at that point with him and Tristan Wirfs and ride it out with Hainsey or draft another center later on in the draft. They didn't go that route. Then Jason comes out and says he's basically our starting center. Hainsey's not moving to left guard. He's going to be our backup center. And so you're like, okay, so they have a pretty clear idea of what they want to do. They've brought in a couple of pieces in free agency we talked about a couple of episodes ago that are probably going to be fill-in guard positions, for the season or maybe, a couple. And then Spytek comes out the next day, I think, or 2 days later, and he's talking about how they're going to figure it out. They're going to shuffle the line around and figure out what works best. And I don't know what to make of that. I think he's a center. And if you're going to bring him in and you're going to have him put his imprint on this team from his rookie season moving forward, I think just drop him in at center or let him compete at center, which I do think he will eventually win out over Hainsey just because of his physicality. And that's no knock on Hainsey, but to have a guy like Hainsey's experience be his backup is even better on top of that. But I don't know do you think Spytek was just saying that just to kind of build a competition in that room?
Yeah. At that point, when Spytek said that, was the draft officially over or no?
I believe it was. And I think
I thought that wasn't that the day 2 recap or something. I think, I don't know. I could be wrong. I think Grant Barton's a plug and play starting center right away. I think this becomes one of those guys like I would say Jason Kelce from the Eagles, where he's just going to play center his whole career. He's going to play it damn well, and he's going to go into the record books as I'm going to actually step back before I call him a Hall of Famer. That's too much, but possible perennial all-pro center. I think you don't even mess around with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe Spytek was just speaking in the sense of, let's get everybody in the room, let's get everybody in the building, and let's let these guys compete and find out where those pieces fall. And, we don't know if he struggles as a rookie in camp and can't pick it up. It is, it's a different type of offense than he's used to. He does have point of attack issues on some tape where his physicality kind of, recedes a little bit once he makes impact. So you don't know if maybe he ends up saying, if they end up saying, you know what, he's better built to be a guard for that first year to get him acclimated. We don't know how it's going to play out. And I think that was maybe them kind of covering their bases and also building a competition in that room. You know how you can't just tell Hainsey, you're not going to be the starter. Hainsey, you got to let these guys compete and create that culture to where nobody comes in and is given anything. And, if he was the number 1 overall pick, you still can't give him everything. You got to let him earn it. And I think maybe Spytek was taking it more from that angle, but we could be honest here. I think he ends up winning that center position from day 2 probably. And at that
before
point,
before we go to the next topic, I think, in the 6th round where they draft Elijah Klein, who played right guard. Obviously, we know Jason Licht can find guards anywhere in the draft, and he's damn good at it. This guy he's a mauler. He has potentially, with good coaching, he could end up being a starter. I just wonder, with his right guard experience, if they would think about kicking Cody Mock to left guard. See, that's something they're going to figure out in training camp, figure out in the preseason, where Barton's in at center. And could this rookie potentially try to get in the lineup with really good play? I mean, nothing's off the board. I think he ends up, having to really hone his craft before he's a starter. But I do think he has that potential and that type of guard that Jason Licht likes and covets.
Maybe down the road, but it's definitely high. It's a tall task of a 6th round pick. A guy also who's not crazy athletic when you watch his tape and his testing and stuff like that. So I think they bring him in as let's see what this kid could become. We see a mold of clay. We could, get our hands on him and see how it works out. I'm not too keen on moving Mock after he finally kind of got comfortable in the spot he's in. And I think those guys we signed, I think they kind of slide into left guard and maybe somebody kind of rises, the cream rises to the top on that in that scenario. But I will say drafting him in the 6th round also does apply to special teams. Remember, they changed the rules, JC, to where now those smaller, faster gunner type guys are not really a big need on special teams because everyone's lining up, no one's moving. And they're kind of it's almost like a offensive line type of scenario. So you need guys who are good at point of attack, bigger, beefy guys that could clog up and take away those little running lanes for those kick returners. So that's a pick that kind of doubles down in that regard. And who knows if he ends up being that guy one day moving forward. Maybe Mock ends up kicking over to the left in a couple of years or however it plays out. But he's versatile. Again, they bring in a culture. They bring in a physicality. Again, matching it across the board on this draft. So I did like that pick too.
So 2nd round, Jason Licht and co. They draft Chris Broswell, edge rusher out of Alabama. Obviously, most of these edge rushers that come out of Alabama are pretty damn good football players. He had 8 sacks, 3 forced fumbles his last season there at Alabama. He was always playing behind guys. He was playing behind Will Anderson, the other first-round pick earlier in the draft. The kid's an athlete. He can get to the quarterback. I think I saw Trevor Sikkema say he's a plug-and-play starter for the Bucs right away across from Diaby. We'll see if that actually happens, but I could see him and JTS rotating with Yaya getting most of the snaps on the other side. But honestly, kind of another guy we didn't really talk much about for the Bucs, but clearly they coveted him and he can be an impact guy at edge.
Yeah, again, they bring in a guy from a really good culture too. He's physical as hell. That's the difference. But he's not a finished product, not even close. I mean, he doesn't have hand speed. He doesn't have really too many of those finesse moves or bend. He's just really, really physical. And his go-to move, you've seen it probably tons of times on all his highlights, JC. It's just that really powerful, just power move. And how often that's going to work at the NFL level, not going to be like college. But I think they bring in a guy like that can kind of develop him, teach him. He's going to be really good against the run, in my opinion. I think he's going to really hold that side of the field, whichever way, side they play him on. I don't think he starts immediately, though. I think he's going to be a rotational piece. I think all those guys are going to rotate, and I think that's what's going to make it really, really good. But if you can pick and choose your spots with him, and you can put him in a situation where he can, pin his ears back and get some power behind and just kind of rush the passer, you'll build his confidence up. And remember, Yaya came in kind of the same. I want to say he had sort of the same kind of evaluation, and he turned out amazing. His power did translate. So, if you get 2 guys like that at the end of the season, week 12, 13, and they're both hitting like that, that's going to be solid. And it's obvious that the JTS pick is going to slowly work itself out of the building at this point with that decision right there, or with that pick of Braswell.
Jumping back to the first round, so the Bucs on the clock at 26, all the first round edge rushers were off the board. Chop Robinson was the guy I was talking about. And I had a source tell me that the Bucs had 2 edges, probably Latu and Chop Robinson, that were on their board that they wanted in the first round. Obviously, they probably also didn't know that Graham Barton was going to fall in their lap. I do believe if Barton was gone and there was one of those edges still available, I think they would have gone edge, because I think they knew, just like I knew, JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, was going to slide into the second round. And that could have been a spot where Jason trades up to secure JPJ after getting one of those edges in the first round. But this is the way the draft played out. They got Barton, so then they move. They get their other biggest need, edge, in the second round, and I think it worked out great.
From what I know, I don't think JPJ was even on the Bucs board. I don't think
the injuries are very concerning.
Yeah, I think they kind of had him as a last resort. If everything else failed and somehow nothing worked in their favor, then maybe. But yeah, Braswell made sense at that spot after they went Barton. It just made sense to go with that guy. He was the best available edge rusher there. I think he has really good potential. I think his size, his physicality checks off a lot of things. And like we talked about, just a second ago, that physicality matches what the Bucs are trying to build. And I love that. I love the theme, like I keep going back to about this draft, was just physical and culture. Just those 2 things on every single one of these picks is checked off immediately. And the guys like, the Buckies and the McMillans that we talk about later here, speed also is another thing that they checked off with those 2 picks. But yeah, I like this Braswell pick. It's not a guy that, I had it circled as my best edge rusher, but in that spot at that position with the Bucs need, it makes sense. And I could see how they could work with this and turn it into something special, especially with Todd Bowles adding, Tyke, like we talked about. It's going to change a lot of things, man.
So going back to your favorite player, that's our next topic, Tyke Smith. I don't know if you saw a little tweet I put out. I projected the Bucs starting roster. Christian Izen quote tweeted it with a laughing emoji, and all of Bucs Twitter was like, "Oh God, JC, he crushed."
Stupid.
Shut up. Shut up. There's a reason why Tyke Smith went early. Christian Izen was an undrafted free agent. That's going to be a battle in camp. Nothing against Christian Izen whatsoever. He was a solid player for us last year, especially with not really having a guy in the nickel, and for him to come in and play like he did. I do think Tyke Smith takes that over from him as a starter, but it's going to be a battle in camp. What do you think about this?
listen, for people to see that reaction and not expect it, it blows my mind. These are competitors. They're at the highest possible, level of their sport. For them to not see a tweet like that and not get juiced and want to be competitive and want to go in and compete, like, he's not going to give him the spot. And that's what you want as a fan too. You don't want Izen to just hand over the starting spot. Izen worked his ass off to get that almost exact same position we're talking about with Tyke. But Tyke is a very physical, very, very fast, very smart, just checks off all the boxes. He's a rookie too. So he's going to have to come in, and I want him to earn it. And at the end of the day, JC, they're both going to play. They're both going to probably play similar number of snaps, probably the edge going to Tyke Smith. Is Tyke going to steal that role from him midway through training camp or at the end of preseason, right before the regular season? I don't know. Maybe. But at the end of the day, they're all going to be working together in that room. There's a very tight locker room right now. And I know just from speaking to Jason over the weekend, that they made an emphasis to draft guys that fit their room. Their personalities had to fit the other guys' personalities because they want all these guys to have camaraderie. And so, you're going to see Jamel Dean celebrating when Tyke makes a play, and you're going to see Izen celebrating when Tyke makes a play, and vice versa. You're going to see Tyke celebrating when Izen makes a play. And I don't think they're going to have a problem with who gets a start and who doesn't, because the way Todd Bowles plays his DBs and his defenders, they're all going to get to play. And whoever gets hands on balls the most, that's who's going to see more opportunities. And I think all you can ask of Tyke is go in there, compete, put your head down, do exactly what you've been doing. Because he was not the heralded guy in that defensive back room heading into this draft out of Georgia, right? He just wasn't. And here he is, again, starting back at the bottom, work your ass off. Every one of these guys work their ass off and let the chips fall where they may, and the plays will be made. When you're in there, make a play. Izen, when you're in there, you make a play. I like that response from Izen. I want to see that. I don't want to see.
I tweeted back to Izzy and I said, "Listen, I love this response. I want this to be a battle. I'm just simply projecting what the lineup's going to be. You know what I mean? I want there to be a battle. But
JC, before you move, I was going to say I agree. I think Tyke.
I'm not moving on.
I was going to say I think Tyke does end up being the starting nickel.
I do too. Think about this. Tyke from University of Georgia, team high at Georgia, 70 tackles, 4 interceptions last year. I mean, the kid's a baller, and he rushes the passer so well. I tweeted out, I was like, please, let's have you be our next Rondé Barber, because he's dangerous blitzing.
Dude, I watched him and I immediately saw Honey Badger and Rondé Barber together. Like, that's the role he's going to have. And he's smart. And imagine when he gets to that point where Antoine got to, where everything just now becomes kind of second nature with the defense, and now he can just go out there and play. He's smart. He shows crazy IQ. He recognizes plays before they happen. He's usually breaking on balls before the pass is even made. He understands concepts. You bring in a guy like that, you know who that reminds you of? All those things I just said? That's Rondé fucking Barber, dude. That's Rondé Barber. That's what he does. He's in the slot. He's jumping around the line of scrimmage. He's not afraid to get his nose dirty and get in on run tackles and run support. That's what you want. That's why I'm so excited about this pick, because he reminds me so much of that. Not saying he's Rondé Barber. I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer, but he can play that role. And maybe, who knows, he ends up being like another Antoine for this defense. And man, you're building something special now, and you're going to pay Antoine. So he's not going anywhere. Now you got another guy behind that. Jordan Whitehead is not going to be here forever. He's a little bit older than Antoine. So you've got a really good chemistry and a really good outlook with that room. It's an awesome pick, man. And I'm with you. Like, we're on the same here. That's a Rondé-esque type of player.
So moving on to the next topic, 3rd round, Buccaneers select Jaylen McMillan from Washington. He is a slot monster. I just wonder, this is a high praise, but for Liam Cohen, Jaylen McMillan reminds me so much of Cooper Kupp, just the way they're such good route runners, great hands. I mean, this guy is a stud in the slot, and I got to wonder, and I want to ask you, do you think this possibly pushes Chris Godwin outside out of that slot role to put McMillan in the slot?
I think they're going to both play it. I don't think it pushes Godwin, because Godwin is just going to be so good in that spot. But they do know that Godwin's not going to probably be here after the season. So
this is the Godwin replacement. I mean, this is the Chris Godwin pick,
and it would make
the replacement pick.
And it would make no sense to bring in that replacement and not give him reps at, his natural position, the position that he plays really, really well and excels at, especially with his hands and his speed and his ability to run routes like you talked about. So I do see them both getting reps in that spot. And I could see them doing that from a position of, let's not make Chris Godwin look unbelievable on his way out, because that's going to make it look a little bit worse. And listen, front offices do that stuff. If they know you've got a payday coming up, they're going to play you in a different spot to try to lower your value if they want to keep you. I don't think that will happen with Chris. I think there's too much respect there. But to not play McMillan in that spot, it's not a bad thing too. Imagine Liam being able to go in the lab and say, I can now push Chris on any given moment. I can have them swap out and I can have him run these routes. That's what's so great about Chris Godwin, is he can do everything in every one of those positions at wide receiver. So now you bring in a guy, again, versatility, culture, speed, physicality, all those things get checked off. He is the future Chris Godwin. I would be more worried if I'm Trey Palmer as opposed to Chris Godwin, because I think this guy could take away playing time from Trey, who showed the ability to make plays, but he also showed the ability to not make plays. He showed the inability to catch balls when they're there and make the easy play. He misses blocks. So immediately McMillan comes in and is pushing for wide receiver 3 rep. And, it could be wide receiver 3/4. This is going to elevate Trey Palmer's push and his grind. So again, doing some of the same stuff we talked about with Izen and Tyke. So I like this pick a lot. And do you see the highlight where he caught a ball almost like an inch off the turf, dude, with his fingers? I was like, okay, that's a natural ball catching wide receiver. That is a stud. I like that pick, man.
There's one thing I know about this pick is the morning after day 2, Trey Palmer definitely woke up pissed off. So, but what I was going to also say about Jaylen McMillan, he did run a 4.47 at the combine. This guy is not slow. He is tall. He's a quick dude. I'm excited about that pick. I really think he could be an instant impact player on the Buccaneers offense. Moving to
real quick,
our guy.
Quick, I was going to ask you, JC, do you think he has the potential to maybe slide into that kick returning spot? Because now you're supposed to have 2 kick returners.
McMillan?
Yeah.
No, but I could see Bucky Irving.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up as a question on the
which is our next topic. Is Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving. The guy is talked about being a small back, but if you watch his press conference that he had, he loves people saying that he's small, because he had forced the most missed tackles in college football. I think he had, 1,593 yards from scrimmage last season. Great out of the backfield on third down, catching the ball. Guy's a stud. And that's another guy, once again, thanks a lot, Jason Light, I didn't think of, because my whole mindset was they need a bruiser. And I was like, Audric S to me makes a lot of sense. But no, they go with Bucky Irving, and Bucky Irving could be a star in Tampa.
Listen, you wanted a bruiser. He's actually a bruiser, which is kind of weird to
he's
say
like a bruiser, but yeah.
So he reminds me of a lot of work done. He's smaller stature, but he wants to run in between the tackles. He wants to hide behind his lineman, and he doesn't shy away from contact. He tries to run you over. He puts his shoulder down a lot lower than most guys, but he's physical, man. I like that. I like that about a running back that's physical. He's kind of has that work done build, but he also reminds me of Chase at the exact same time, a guy who's already on this roster, and it feels like they decided, Chase isn't getting any younger. He's battling injuries most of the time. Let's bring in another version of him with a little bit of work done and shake and bake. And you know what? He's a perfect complement to Rashad. If we really want to think about this, JC, we kept saying we want a bruiser, but we already got a big back. I mean,
Rashad is basically a bruiser. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think more of that short yardage issue wasn't him. It was more so the push up front. You get a guy like Graham Barton, you're thinking, okay, we got to fix that. So let's go get a little dude who can come in there, slide in and change the pace between him and Rashad. And if Chase is, not getting younger, sometimes he's a little bit, banged up too. Let's bring in this guy who I think could be the future 1-2 punch with him and Rashad. And there's no mistaking, like he's very good with the ball in his hands. So that, could he be a punt returner / kick returner in this offense? That's a really good way for you to make the roster too as a kid at this spot too.
Some of the player comps I was hearing for Bucky were Devin Singletary and Kyron Williams. Kyron Williams makes a lot of sense because Liam Cohen coached him for the Rams and was a part of drafting Kyron Williams. I think this guy, like I said, impact player right away. This offense is going to be fun. Just thinking about the offensive line now, it's a whole different ball game than last year. I tweeted months and months ago. I said, just wait till you see how Jason Light just revamps this offensive line. And sure enough, Barton's going to be on it. I mean, it's going to be a whole different thing for Baker Mayfield. It's going to be fun for him. And I do think now Baker Mayfield's set up to have the best season of his entire career statistics wise.
Yeah, it's going to change how Baker gets to do his thing, but it's also going to change drastically how the Bucs run the ball. I mean, now you have the ability to put those two guys in the backfield, one on each side of Baker. You can also put McMillan back there. You can do a lot of the stuff that they were doing in LA with the Rams, where they're getting really creative with these guys. But now you can also hand the ball to a guy like Bucky or Rashad, and you're going to get a push up front on one of those draw plays, and they're actually going to generate positive yards. So he's physical. They're all going to be very physical. And then again, something people aren't talking enough about, the Bucs are going to be more in 11 personnel. They're making an emphasis to take more bodies away from the line of scrimmage while also creating more of a physical presence on that front line. It's going to open up lanes. It's going to be a better outcome for the Bucs. And I think Liam is on a different level as it relates to creativity in the run game versus what we had last year with Dave Canales. You could say, whatever you want about the offensive line, but the creativity could still kind of cover some of that up, which I thought we lacked last year. Liam comes in immediately, 12 personnel out the fucking window. We're not doing that anymore. We got 11 personnel. We got to get as many playmakers on the field as possible. You got Graham Barton in the middle. It's going to fix a lot of things, man. It's going to be fun to watch, especially I cannot wait to see the run game creatively. That's what I'm most looking forward to, because I do think Liam, if you go back and look at what he does with Kentucky, he knows how to use a back like Rashad. He had a guy very similar to Ray Davis. So it'll be fun.
And it was interesting. They took Bucky over Ray Davis. And that says a lot, because that was Liam Combs' running back last year at Kentucky. Ray Davis was. And for them to just see Bucky Irving and what he brings to the table for the Bucs, it speaks volumes.
Dude, his tape is so good. It's so fun to watch.
Yeah.
He's so shifty. And what did he say to the Bucs? I don't know if it was Jason or Spytek said. One of the first things he said when they met with him was, the first guy never tackles me. Just straight up, dead serious, looking right in the eyes. First guy never tackles me. Okay, I'll bring him in. Another dog, another physical guy, speed, culture is there from Oregon. That's a winning program. They have a lot of fun up there. So again, more of those same, culture and all that. So all those check boxes are marked off. It's awesome to see this pick, man.
And just to talk about it for a second, 7th round pick Devin Culp from Washington. They can't help themselves with these Washington players. I think now Culp reunites with Cade Otton. Culp, definitely a project, 4.47 40. He's a good run blocker, but has a lot of development to do. I mean, we needed a tight end. Maybe, we'll see what happens with him if they can develop him. But overall, just a really solid draft for Jason Light, Spytek, and the whole group. We definitely got better. And I had to bring this up. I know grades don't mean a lot, but if you've seen the NFC South draft grades, whew, Bucs are usually an A, B plus, B. All these other teams, Saints are getting D's and F's, and Atlanta's getting a D, and Carolina's get.
I got to tell you something. That graphic I put out is not real.
Oh no, but I saw other ones that legitimately say that.
Well, they gave the Saints an A.
I wasn't just talking about yours.
No. They gave the Saints an A. I thought the Saints did a good job too. I hate saying that.
Who gave the Saints an A?
A couple people, definitely Fox did too. They put them and us both got A's, but yeah, I think, the grades are funny, but listen, I agree. They did even that last pick, Culp. He's a faster guy as a tight end. He's got a little bit of project on him, but he's going to be a special teams type of guy. He's big and he's physical, so you get at least a blocker on special teams, a guy who's going to be out there tackling. That's how he's going to make this team. I don't project him to be the starting tight end. Cade Otton's job is not in jeopardy by any means. Maybe in a couple of years, who knows? But he's fast, he's physical, comes from a great culture again, matches him up with McMillan. So, it's a 7th round pick. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
But even with that and the UTEP pick, with the offensive line, I mean, let's take those two out the window. Those other guys, I mean, you're talking about guys that are going to make impact in year one, almost across the board. Do you see any one of those first 4 picks that doesn't make impact? 5, sorry.
No, they're all making impacts immediately.
Yeah.
What I was going to say really quickly about the Saints draft, the Saints taking Spencer Rattler, right, is literally so funny, because the Bucs fans are going to hate this guy so much, because he's basically like the douche Baker Mayfield, except not as talented as Baker Mayfield. He's going to be the easiest guy to root against. I do think he takes Carr's job eventually, because I just think he's naturally a better thrower than Carr. And Carr's been pretty mediocre his whole career. He has the high upside, but he's never really delivered. I don't think he's ever won a playoff game. Rattler does have some potential, but Bucs fans will hate this guy.
I feel like in the NFL circles, either people like him or they hate him. There's no in between with that kid. Just from the conversations I've had, I don't think anybody in the Bucs building liked him for multiple reasons. But hey, I hope the reasons that I've been told are the ones that the Saints get with this kid. But he's talented as hell. Like, to not, I can't say he's not talented, and he's also been through adversity, which I think NFL coaches and GMs do respect. But listen, if he's starting for the Saints after week 8 or 9, that means the Bucs are in a really good position in the division. Probably the Falcons are in an okay position. I mean, that's a whole different can of worms that they've opened up over there. So probably had to do an entire podcast about why the Falcons should not have done what they've done. But that's not our
really
job.
quick just to go through some of these draft picks and their 40 times, just to show kind of what kind of athletes we got. Broswell's a 4.6 guy. Tyke Smith ran a 4.46. Jaylen McMillan ran a 4.47, and Bucky Irving ran a 4.5. So all guys that they got some speed. They're athletes, man. And Jason Light just drafted a bunch of freaks with Barton and Broswell and McMillan. Really just
Tyke's a freak.
Dudes.
Tyke's
Tyke's undersized but he's a perfect slot corner.
He's faster than the wide receiver.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. Nah, dude. I love those picks. Like I said, physical, speed, and culture. All those things immediately checked off on every single one of these picks. Maybe not that.
All right, guys. Well, we wanted to keep this to somewhat a short episode because tomorrow night we are going to be going Loose Cannon's draft recap. You're gonna see a lot of different opinions by these guys, and I'm excited for that show. You can follow us here at Fully Loaded Bucs on Instagram, Fully Loaded, a Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast on all streaming outlets, and you can always find us on the YouTube channel, Loose Cannons Podcast. Anything else, Samer?
Oh man, see you tomorrow night. This is awesome. Go Bucs.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. Go Bucs.